What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another modern video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the tried and true, the absolute staple of the modern format, or at least one of the decks that people would think of when they play the modern format, and we're going to be looking at Jund, and it looks like a very much like a standard, like boomer-ish Jund style deck. And we're going to be looking at it in Moto this time. I think I can make the displays a little bit better with the card preview and stuff to help out a little bit better when I'm explaining cards and stuff, and it's a little bit harder for things to kind of get moved and misconstrued and that. So, of course, before we get too deep into it, if you have not already, I would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, and of course, ring the notification bell so you know when videos like this and other Pioneer videos get posted. It means a lot. It supports the channel and keeps me making videos. Also, if you are interested in more content, I do have my Twitch link in the description of this video. Go ahead, follow me over on Twitch, as well as a Discord server with the link in the description as well. So, Jund. If you want to look at this deck list, by the way, well, I guess while I'm kind of going over it, or you're interested in like downloading it and playing it, I will link the deck list in the description as well. I do that for all my deck techs, but I always forget to mention that. I just kind of like throw it down there because hopefully people are going down there anyway to look at it and so on. So, anyway, Jund. For those that are not initiated with Jund, it's essentially like the premier like mid-range deck. Like Abzan really doesn't exist, Sultai really doesn't exist. Usually it's in Jund, and honestly, with how good the red cards are currently in the format, with especially some of the powerful black cards like Tarmogoyf and Renin 6 are still very powerful cards. This card in particular being very strong. Uh, Usually we would see versions that are playing Ragavan, and then like we have Urza Saga, and then like getting it back with Renin 6 and kind of grind your opponent out that way. We see some of the elements here, but notably missing Urza Saga. So, what exactly did this Jund deck do, and what does it do to kind of, take over the game and win games? So, of course, starting with any deck that is playing red cards, we have Ragavan. It has been said a million and one times, and it'll be say a million and one times more, either until this card gets banned or somehow power crept out of the format. This is probably the best one drop, red one drop in the format, possibly even the best one drop period in the format. Of course, just it doesn't really generate card advantage because it takes your opponent's top card. It could be a land, you can't end up playing it. However, the fact that you just make a ton of mana off of this card, where like in this deck, you're abusing it in the way to cast some of your other powerful 3 drops, and we'll kind of go over those. You hit with this Ragavan, and on like turn 2, you have access to Liliana the Veil, instantly putting pressure on your opponent's hand. You're able to discard excess cards. If you're having like a Renin 6, you're able to discard excess lands and pick them up with Renin 6. And of course, play them for turn, whatever, or return them so you have like something to discard if you're holding on to, say, like a Fury, or you're holding on to like a Rutir's Charm or something like that. You have Fable the Mirror Breaker, just a one of in the deck. Of course, moving away from it, Fable, we know, recently banned in Standard. A very good Pioneer card, been a very good Modern card, and kind of a staple in some of the other decks, like 4-color Creativity is one that comes to mind. And of course, on the flip side, getting to copy like your Furies, your Seasoned Pyromancers, and things of that nature, even like your Tarmogoyfs and stuff, aren't necessarily that bad either. And this card just generates like tons of value. Dig through your deck, try to find like the key piece of removal that you need, maybe find like the Boseiju and whatnot to just kind of get the ball rolling and just kind of shore up a bit of your hand if it's a little shaky even. Of course, we mentioned Seasoned Pyromancer, entering the battlefield, discarding 2 cards, and then drawing 2 cards, but then getting to make 1/1s for each non-land card that you discarded this way. So a little bit of a benefit. Definitely good to play it when you just have some dead cards in hand. Playing against like more controlly decks, and your just hand is full of like terminate and like fatal pushes and things like that, or you're kind of in the late game and you're holding on to like Thoughtseizes and Inquisitions, to possibly clear the way for one of your other threats, or and having the added benefit of like getting pitched to Pyromancer and getting a 1/1 along with it, and of course getting some fresh cards as well. Kolaghan's Command helps you be a little bit more helps you be a little grindier by getting to return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. You can mess with like your opponent's draw step. You do this in their draw step when they have no cards. They draw off to one card. You're able to make them discard it, and if it's not an instant, then you essentially time walk them in a way. Destroying a random artifact can come up, like you just randomly get pithing needled. Destroying like a hammer or something of that nature can come up, and of course dealing 2 damage to any target does kill a decent amount of like the creatures and stuff in the format. When you're looking at like cards from like the hammer deck, you're looking at like the tokens made by Four Color Creativity. You're looking at Ragavans and things like that. Just kind of a versatile card, and like I mean, was very popular like back in the day. People playing like 2, 3 copies of it. I remember like I was playing Death Shadow. I was playing like 17, 18 lands and playing 2 Kolaghan's commands because it was like that good in the format. So seeing as a one, at least a one of, and like seeing it played in the modern format definitely brings like a tear to my eye because this card is really awesome and is just very flexible in what it does. Finally, we have Riveteer's Charm, which is a new one from Streets of New Capenna. The set is obviously not like that old, or is older, whatever. So it gives you like the option of having some like non-targeted removal by making your opponent sacrifice a creature or planeswalker with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. So this is like a way like against scam, like you can get rid of like a Fury or like a Grief, just because like they're not going to have anything else that has a higher converted mana cost. So that's kind of nice. They you can it still doesn't get around like them just having another like when this creature dies, leaves the battlefield, whatever, it comes back. But it is a cheap-ish way of just making sure that the Fury is off the table. Not like Liliana says like minus ability where they could sacrifice a Dauthi Voidwalker or Ragavan or whatnot. Exiling the top 3 cards of your library until your next end step. You may play those cards like 3 mana, essentially draw 3 cards. Like, and you could just play this as like your turn 4 spell. Again, not like super amazing, but if you hit 2 lands off of it, you're able to play a land that turn, and then play the land the next turn, and then cast like the other spell. You end up playing like all 3 cards, which is great. Also getting to exile target player's graveyard. There is some of the graveyard decks kind of rolling around. We have the Rhinos list that are playing Murktide Regents, so you can kind of like hit their graveyard if you need to. Also, Riveteer's Charm hitting like those Murktides as well, because chances are if the deck's playing Murktide, it's going to be able to get rid of those, and they tend to get very, very large. So just having that added benefit, getting exile the graveyard before they can even set it up, hitting the living end players, and so on. There's definitely some utility to having the exile target player's graveyard ability on Riveteer's Charm. Overall, making this card like pretty solid. It's like not very sexy, but it definitely does its role very, very well. It's what you see as a one of. So, uh, if anything, that should tell you how good this Ragavan card is, because it does kind of enable some of this other stuff. With a treasure giving you any color mana, it kind of does fix your mana as well, as we kind of like dig into this mana base. And while it's not like insanely crazy, it is definitely a mana base. So, what else exactly makes this deck mid-rangey? How do we get the tires going? Of course, like we talked about Red and Six, we've sung its praises in just about every other deck that it shows up in. And Jund was really the first one, I think, to take advantage of it when this card came out in the original Modern Horizons. Where you had cards like Forgotten Caves here that just cycle, so you're able to cycle this, pick it back up with Red and Six, and then you have the ability to cycle it again, essentially getting to like draw 2 cards in like that one burst, and then getting to at least draw another card every turn with this plus your draw step, which makes it very likely that you're going to find any one of these other like big payoff spells to kind of try to like take over the game. Of course, in conjunction with fetch lands, you're able to just continue to thin out your deck and make it likely that you're going to draw spells. So it's like these kind of draw cards in the fact that you're going to hit your land drop every turn. You're going to make sure that you can cast like your Seasoned Pyromancers, even possibly get up to hard casting Furies, or just getting a double spell by playing like a Pyromancer, a Kolaghan's Command to like get back a Tarmogoyf and then play the Tarmogoyf. There's just so many possibilities that get opened up thanks to this card Ren and Six, and in conjunction with Ragavan, crazy enough like makes Jund at least have like 8 cards where it's probably going to be able to compete with just about any deck that is in the format as long as it has the right draw the lines up. Uh, Over on this side here, you have Inquisitions at 3 copies and Thoughtseizes at 2 copies. Thoughtseize we know is like the best one mana discard spell in the format. Get to look at a player's hand, you choose an on-land card from it, and then they discard that card. You lose 2 life. While this deck, the 2 life is sort of kind of a drawback because your mana base is pretty painful. Playing like all these shock lands, fetching just about every turn, or ideally every turn, with like Wrenn and 6, and only having like a swamp and a forest to be able to fetch as like basics, and everything else wanting you to like pay 3 life to come into play. Thoughtseize definitely comes at a big cost. You're not playing Death Shadow in this deck. Maybe you could find a way to play Death Shadow in this deck, and then you could play like more Thoughtseizes over Inquisitions, so on and so forth. But you're kind of looking into like a different deck where like these discard spells are going to kind of help you against like some of the combo decks, and Inquisition getting to deal with a lot of like what you want to end up dealing with when playing this kind of deck. So it definitely gets the nod over Thoughtseize, even though Thoughtseize, like in a vacuum, is the more powerful discard spell to be playing. For Lightning Bolt, we're actually seeing more decks play Lightning Bolt over cards like Unholy Heat. There's definitely a decent amount of like graveyard hate running around. People playing like main deck Endurance, how they always been, and never really stopped it. But like with the popularity of decks like uh, the Blue Red Murktide, playing 4 color, so on and so forth. Lightning Bolt having the added utility of getting to deal an extra damage straight up without having to have cards in your graveyard, killing a lot of the things that you want to be killing in the format. On top of getting go to the face as well to kind of give you a little bit of reach in those late game situations, maybe getting a hit or two with a Tarmogoyf, makes it very, very powerful and definitely is a card to kind of look to as just something to hold everything together. It does a little bit of everything, so it has a home here. Um, Further down for like your like removal-ish kind of cards, you have Abrupt Decay, which can get rid of a permanent with mana value 3 or less. Being uncounterable some amount of the time is relevant, but a lot of the time this is just like a super efficient way of dealing with a lot of the threats that are in the format, and without having to not having to worry about like Assassin's Trophy giving your opponent like a land, which I don't think is necessarily like super important, but there is a lot of decks that play like a really low to the ground curve with some very powerful cards. Looking at Murktide, so like giving them an extra land in those scenarios does actually kind of hurt you. So Abrupt Decay gets the nod over something like Assassin's Trophy. You have Terminate, straight up, just destroy a creature, cannot be regenerated. Unfortunately, does not get around the like Undying Evils and whatnot that get played to bring things back. But an efficient removal spell for a creature, having the instant speed, the bonus of being an instant speed over like Dreadbore, which could hit Planeswalkers, but you have to play at sorcery speed. So Terminate getting the nod there. Finally, you have like a Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. Of course, like the feels like the redheaded stepchild compared to Uro, which we saw like ruin a format and is currently like one of my highest viewed videos on my channel like ever. Kroxa is still very, very powerful and can close out a game very quickly. I didn't like this card before, like earlier, like in the format when everyone was just running like 4 times Unholy Heats and playing Fatal Pushes and playing like Prismatic Endings and Solitudes and things like that. But while I don't think those cards are necessarily like on the downswing, I think with the Elementals deck getting Yorion banned and really like kind of being around, but not really. You do have some of these other decks that are playing those cards, but now like the most popular deck that was playing those cards is now like way farther down on the metagame list, and some of the other decks are really just like playing Unholy Heat. So I think it's fine to play a Kroxa now for the fact that, you know, paying 4 mana, exiling 5 cards is fine because you're not really relying on a Delirium game plan. Tarmogoyf cares about both graveyards, and if your opponent doesn't deal with this, it will end the game very quickly, and it's less likely that they have cards to deal with it because all of those aforementioned cards are seeing less play in the format currently. Finally, we have Tarmogoyf, just king of the monsters. With the addition of battles now and some of the other decks in the format playing battles, Tarmogoyf can actually grow up to a 9-10, which is not going to happen like on a game-to-game basis. And interesting to see like there's no Mishra's Baubles in this list, so like you're not even like piling a lot in terms of card types for Tarmogoyf. But even here, you have lands, you have planeswalkers, creatures, instant sorceries, even like one enchantment that could end up there. Easily your opponent wants to kill Reflection or Kiki-Jiki. It's going to put an enchantment in the graveyard. A lot of people are playing Baubles, so like Tarmogoyf can go from there. So just kind of giving you an idea that like Tarmogoyf just isn't like it's here because Jund has always played Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf even nowadays is still a very, very good card. It's still pretty aggressively costed, and with people playing a bunch of like cheap artifacts, enchantments being more prevalent thanks to Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. People playing like lands that want you to discard them to get effects and so on. Tarmogoyf can get really big really quick, and an unchecked Tarmogoyf can just run away with the game. It's just very easy. And with people playing more lightning bolts and stuff, you come into these scenarios where Tarmogoyf's a 2/3 with really no instants in the graveyard, to then getting bolted and your opponent being sad when they find out how state-based actions work, and your Tarmogoyf lives with 3 damage on it. You know, so that is the Jund deck for the modern format. Uh, there's some cards on the sideboard here, but I think these are probably more like metagame, definitely metagame dependent, because I think you could be playing like some amount of endurances. You're playing like a decent amount of green cards with like these here. You got this. Maybe not. Maybe not so many green cards, but nonetheless, I've seen people play other cards worse. So like kind of a downside to this, now looking at it, is that you're not playing very many green cards, so you kind of miss out on like Force of Vigor and like Endurance and stuff like that. But I mean, this deck won a challenge this past weekend, so really how bad could it actually be not having access to those cards? Apparently not very bad. So that's going to do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a like on the video, and of course subscribing to the channel and ringing the notification bell so you know when videos like this and Pioneer videos and so on and so forth get posted to my channel. Go ahead and dive into the description of this video. You'll see a link to the deck list, a link to the Discord server, and a link to my Twitch as well. Go ahead and follow those over there and just check out the deck, follow me on Twitch, all that fun and happy stuff. So that's going to do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to see you all in the next video.